This is a video game, and we argued about it some.
Hey, it's Games Miss Podcast. Talk about games. Some of us liked it, some didn't. Anyway, talking about video game. I'm gonna drink my whiskey now. Hello and welcome to the Games That Made Us podcast. I'm Brent. I'm here with my friend Kirk. Say hi, Kirk.
Hey, girl. Woo!
That's the best one yet. That's going to be our new intro song. I'm just going to duplicate that 85 times.
Remix that.
Fucking yes.
Yeah. And we're joined again by our good friend Benny. Say hi, Benny.
I can't match that.
Right? That's too high a standard to live up to. Oh shit. So how you doing, fellas?
Pretty good, all things considered. I mean, I'm kind of bummed out about how we had to do a little bit of re-recording because the first one for this particular game kind of fell through. But hey. For the listeners, though, it did give us a chance to go back and play this shitty game.
Yeah, so just a little inside baseball. So it actually, for me personally, it probably is for the best. We decided to try and record this one and Fear outside in typical Midwest weather, and so at least on mine and to a certain extent Benny's microphone, it just sounded like a fucking windstorm. But that was okay because I was slowly just melting into a non-human that day anyway. I was incredibly hungover and just like not feeling it. So it was a very funny episode because it was mostly just me sort of crying and weeping slowly on the couch while the guys picked apart Baldur's Gate. But it wasn't a particularly cogent or coherent episode. So
Brent was like that girl you see coming out of the nightclub with her friends, and she's the one crying for some reason, and you don't know, and her mascara's running, and she's just a fucking mess.
Oh god,
that was Brent.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Yeah, it was in pretty stark contrast to Kirk and myself. It was a beautiful day. We're drinking some beer, and Brent is, as he said, literally he's just melting on the lawn furniture, self-effacing. You apologized 1,000 times. It was the most Catholic I've been in like 25 years. So that was pretty cool. Well, hey, let's do a real quick round robin of other than this game, which I think we mentioned briefly, but we're going to be talking about one of my favorite games, Baldur's Gate, the original from '98, but. Other than this game, what we've been playing recently, and let's start with Benny. Benny, what have you been up to recently? Oh, I've been splitting my time between the aforementioned Helldivers 2 and finally getting around to playing Horizon Forbidden West.
Okay.
Really like me some open world games. Yeah.
Yeah. I was picking away a little bit at the first game in that series that you so graciously sent over to me. So,
oh yeah.
I was enjoying that. So, although I will say that I don't quite know what it is that game developers have against making children that don't look like horrifying monsters. Like all children in video games just uniformly look like little gremlins, which
I'm convinced that it's a mechanism of torture for the gamer. As we are universally compelled to shoot or try to destroy them, but they are universally invulnerable. So it's a Sisyphean effort of rolling a rock up a hill, where the rock is child murder.
Children?
Yes.
The Rock is children. Oh, I thought The Rock was Dwayne Johnson.
I'm sure he has children.
And that's probably true.
And he may have pushed things up hills.
That's true. He may have pushed his children up hills. I don't know. Yeah. Hey, I'm not here to judge, man. I'm not here to judge. We've all had those days. As a parent to two small children,
We've all had those days. Kirk, what about you, man? What have you been playing lately?
Still just Helldivers 2, and then I did jump back into Graveyard Keeper for a while.
Yeah.
I was really, really close to finishing a lot of storylines in that, and then I kind of been overplaying Helldivers 2 because everybody else was playing the hell out of it and kept pulling me into it. But to get rid of some of the burnout, because people have been asking me to play it so often.
Yeah.
I had to switch gears a little bit. So yeah, went back to Graveyard Keeper and try to finish that up.
I started Graveyard Keeper. I did pick it up from Steam because it was cheap, and and I'm gonna go back to it, I promise. But the nice thing that Stardew Valley does is it introduces one mechanic at a time, and it's very good for small brain people like me. It's like, hey, here's a radish, go plant it. After you've planted the radish, we'll tell you about the next mechanic. Graveyard Keeper, it's like there's just buttons and pop-ups, and it's like, wait, did you know about the blueprints? Did you hear about the spells? Did you see the guy? There's this thing. Here's a talking skull, and I was like 5 minutes in, and I felt so fucking overwhelmed. I was like, okay, all right, hang on. I was not prepared for this because I went in with the mindset of it's going to be like Stardew Valley. It's going to be really chill. And I'm sure it is once you get into it. But, I just was not prepared for that many game mechanics. As we all know, game mechanics not my strong suit anyway. And it was just too many all at once, man.
Yeah, and it drops all the DLC on you at the same time. And, like, you can basically start doing everything as soon as you're mechanically able to satisfy like the material requirements. So it's it doesn't have a high learning curve, but it definitely has a high participation curve to where you're like not just like desperate to get enough of any material to do the next step or risk, because the game functions on a weekly cycle, and if you don't want to have to wait 6 more in-game days to do something, then you're rushing to have something to do for each appropriate character on each day. That game's got some fun material there too. Maybe that we've all played it, we can talk about it sometime. Although maybe these intros we will have effectively done that.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like Vampire Survivors. Eventually, like, we won't need to do an episode on it because I'll just bring it up on every fucking game or every fucking episode.
I mean, it's an incredible game.
It is, but it's also like if we talk about it 30 seconds 5 times, we've basically covered what the game is. Which nothing against it. That's amazing. That's exactly my kind of game. But
well, eventually all of our fan is going to be like, just shut up about fucking Vampire Survivors, please. Shut up.
This is like, I just picture like I get like a bloodstained letter in the mail. Like I open it up and it's like, I'm your fan. Please stop talking about Vampire Survivor.
Oh, so
it's very annoying.
Our fan is we'll never get to talk to them. Like their time zone is going to make it impossible.
Our stereotypically Russian fan for some reason.
Yeah.
Well, I've been playing a lot of games, but the reason why I've been playing a lot of games is because what I've really been doing more than playing a game is playing with the system and tweaking it. So this is, and for the benefit of our listeners, you can't see it, but I'll put a link in the show description so you can go see the thing. It's called an Ein Odin 2, and it's my birthday present from Aaron, and it's fucking awesome. It's a Android-based console, we'll call it. It's theoretically an emulation console, but I mean it can play anything that Android can play.
So for our listener, what we're looking at is like a Nintendo Switch form factor.
Yeah.
So picture that, and you've basically got it.
Yeah. So it's about the same size. It's between, say, a PS Vita and a full-size Switch. It's a little bit bigger than a Switch Lite.
it's significantly smaller than, say, a Steam Deck. Because it's an ARM-based device, because it's, you know, it not messing with that whole world of trying to be a portable PC like the Steam Deck, like the MSI Claw, like the Legion Go, or any of those. It has really great battery life.
You, just as a computer guy, you have a problem with the x86 instruction set. Just admit it. You ARM purist. There's going to be like no one listening that understands anything that was just spoken, but
that's fine. That's totally fine. And to be clear, I don't really either. This is just like mostly just bullshit so I can get to talk about this device because it's fucking awesome. So the thing can emulate anything. Like, it's software constrained at this point. It's not hardware constrained. So it'll run Switch, it'll run 3DS, it'll run PS2, it'll run Dreamcast, it'll run GameCube, it'll run Wii, it'll run Vita, it'll run PSP. The only...
It could probably run the shitty game we're going to be talking about.
Actually, matter of fucking fact, I was reading about, and I was trying to set it up the other day and having issues with it because I'm not nearly as technical as these two. Winlator is a Windows emulator for Android that'll let you boot up. So, you know, it's doing kind of the Wine thing, but for Android. And yeah, I actually did see somebody running not Baldur's Gate Enhanced Edition, but the OG Baldur's Gate on this device. But I was playing some Half-Life 2 on this. There's an Android port of that. I was playing some Grand Theft Auto San Andreas on this. Like, yeah, it's been super fun. It's been super fun. I was also playing some Switch games, but I won't talk about those because, you know, Nintendo.
Daddy Nintendo will come and spank you.
Yeah, they'll drag me away from my children and they'll be screaming. They'll be like, "No, he emulated games that he also owns legally." But anyway, so if you're the like one person that wants to drop $300-400 on an Android device that is mostly for emulation, but can do fucking anything, it's awesome. It's got Hall effect joysticks. It's fucking like it's super solidly built. It's got great fucking battery life. Like, I have played Switch games on it, and then I've played it on my fucking Switch, and I vastly prefer playing it on my fucking Odin. So consider that an ad or whatever you will, but that's a fucking really cool little device. So
cool. I'd like to hear more about how you get things running on that later.
Okay, and we can talk about that. But today, we are covering one of my very favorite games.
Oh no!
It was released. Oh, no. It was released in 1998, developed by BioWare and published by Interplay/Black Isle. We're going to be talking about Baldur's Gate, the very first one, not the third one that has made the whole internet even slightly more thirsty than it was prior, or at least has revealed how thirsty the internet still is. But the original one, where if you wanted to see boobies, you had to imagine them in your mind because they were tiny and pixelated, like God intended. Not these wonderful CG boobies we have now. I don't know how much of that's going to make it into the final cut. But so, yeah, Baldur's Gate, this is one of my very favorite games. It's a CRPG from back when that distinction mattered. And to kind of talk about this game a little bit, I wanted to kind of run through where we were in 1998. For those of you who maybe are young enough that you didn't have to live through this shit, or who were off doing other things like, I don't know, learning how to play an instrument, or, you know, meeting someone of the same or opposite sex, or, I don't know, doing whatever other people were doing while I was sitting in my basement playing this fucking game. So in 1998, the state of play was basically that there were two kinds of role-playing games.
They were both descended from the great granddaddy, which was Dungeons and Dragons, right? Dungeons and Dragons and all other tabletop role-playing games were inherently a social experience that you had in person over a fucking tabletop. Now, when attempts were made to adapt that to an experience that you could have in a video game format, there were basically two versions of that. The first was a Western version, a North American and European version, which came to be called CRPGs, computer RPGs. Now that's total bullshit, was then as now, because there were console CRPGs, and the genre we're about to talk about, JRPGs, there were computer versions of those too. But CRPGs were mostly text-based, at least at first. They were mostly controlled with the keyboard, and they mostly sucked, if I'm being completely fucking honest. A lot of it was, hey, you walk up to a table, input what you want to do. Well, I want to kick over the table. Sorry, don't understand that input. It was a lot of typing. It was a lot of bullshit. It was a lot of fucking boring, and it was too nerdy even for me, which is really saying something. Now, this was in contrast to the other kind of RPG that were prevalent at the time, which are JRPGs, Japanese RPGs. They were kind of over there. They were on consoles as far as we in the West knew.
Yeah, for my understanding is that the JRPG was deemed potentially unpalatable to a Western audience, so a lot of titles weren't even localized in North America until, in some cases, significantly later. That's why you end up with like Final Fantasy VI being Final Fantasy III in the United States and things like that.
And then in 1997, there was a game called Diablo. It was released by a company called Blizzard, who you may have heard of. Now, Diablo was developed alongside Baldur's Gate. One wasn't based on the other. They were developed in parallel, and they both had kind of the same idea, which was to take CRPGs and to make it basically completely mouse-based. Now, there were definitely lots of keyboard shortcuts. There were definitely things you could do with the keyboard, but it made navigation and basic gameplay all tied to the mouse. And what that meant is that an average, normal fucking human being could actually fucking play the game. And it also made a lot of the gameplay much more graphic, right? And I don't just mean like graphic in the way that like the movies that I like to watch are graphic. I mean graphically based. I didn't know about any of this shit at the time. This is just me setting the stage, because I lived in very rural America, and my idea of video games was you ran to the right and you either killed things or you jumped on things. This is all just for you fuckers. I didn't have any idea about this. I know that we're gonna get into it and we're gonna talk about like tabletop role playing games and Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm there now. But when this game came out, I didn't know about any of that shit. Again, just setting the stage. I wanted to talk about that, and I also wanted to talk real quickly about the time and place of the graphics, because I think this is really interesting. And then I'm going to shut up for a little bit, and I want to see what you guys think about what I've said up to this point. Because the other thing that I find really interesting about this game coming out in 1998 is that it is a 2D sprite-based game, right? And 1998 was a really, really weird year for 2D sprite-based gaming, right?
Yeah, some were good and some were really bad.
Oh, Jesus fucking Christ. Fuck you. But there was this whole explosion, like, okay, I mentioned Diablo. Fallout was another one. There was this whole explosion of these sprite-based CRPGs, and for a second they were really popular. Like Icewind Dale's another one, Planescape Torment,
Myth 2 Soul Blighter.
Yes. Oh, yes, I love that game. But there was this huge explosion of this style of game, and then they immediately got crushed out. And I want to just real quick run through a timeline, again, for anybody that wasn't there, that doesn't know how quickly this changed. And what I did is I went through and I grabbed just some games that got Game of the Year awards from 1995 through 1999. So it's a 4-year gap. And I want to talk about how quickly the 2D games got crushed out, because I think this is just fucking fascinating. All right? 1995. Just some random games that got Game of the Year. This is all, for clarity's sake, these are all by Western publications. I didn't do Famitsu or any of the Japanese publications because they hung on to the 2D a little bit longer. And while that's totally valid, that wasn't our experience in the West at all. 1995, Chrono Trigger, Command and Conquer, Yoshi's Island, and Warcraft 2 all won Game of the Year awards in 95. So 4 games, 4 2D games. In 96, Civ 2, Super Mario 64, Pokemon Red and Blue, Tomb Raider, Duke Nukem 3D, and Quake all won Game of the Year awards. Okay? So now we're down to just 2 of the games being 2D games. In 97, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, Diablo, Final Fantasy VII, GoldenEye, Gran Turismo, Star Fox 64, and Age of Empires. And I think this is where you really start to see that divergence, where for a second, PC hung on to that 2D for a little bit longer. You got Age of Empires, you've got Diablo, right? You've still got a little bit of that 2D sprite-based stuff going on in these Western-developed PC games. But other than Symphony of the Night, it's gone on the consoles. 98, you've got Baldur's Gate, Half-Life, Ocarina of Time, Metal Gear Solid, Resident Evil 2, StarCraft, DDR, The First Thief, and Crash Bandicoot. It's gone, man. Like the 2D shit is dead. And then 99, System Shock 2, Silent Hill, Shenmue, Quake 3 Arena, Pokemon Gold and Silver, Unreal Tournament, and EverQuest. So by 99, the only 2D games that won Game of the Year that year were a game on the Game Boy and an MMO in a time when a lot of people were still using dial-up.
Did you say EverQuest 2? Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah.
That's not 2D either. That one's 3D.
Oh, shit. Okay. All right. So literally, yeah. So by 99, the only 2D game that won was on the fucking Game Boy, which obviously wasn't going to be doing a lot of polygonal graphics. So I say all that to say that I think it's really interesting the time and place for this game. Like, it came out in such a weird spot. Like, 98 was such a weird time to be releasing a game like this. One, just a Western RPG in general. To have it be as successful as it was, those were generally pretty niche titles. Two, to have it be a 2D isometric game in, a year where we had really started to make that transition to 3D. And three, just like the fact that it became one of the premier titles of this sort of mouse-driven Western CRPG subgenre that looked like it was going to become this massive genre, and then immediately kind of got crushed back out. Because even these games that I'm mentioning, Diablo, Fallout, and Baldur's Gate itself with the Dark Alliance sub-series, all of those series wound up going to 3D within the next couple entries. So it's just interesting where we kind of are, where we kind of land with Baldur's Gate in 98, which was not an intentional run.
No, that was great. That was sexy. Yeah, I think, just anecdotally from my memory, I remember it feeling almost imperative to embrace the 3D because it was so thrilling to represent things, representing 3 dimensions with polygons, and that was just, at least for me, really compelling to get.
Yeah.
Even at the time, we look back, I just looked up stills from EverQuest to confirm how that looked. Even how primitive and frankly fucking ugly that was. It was still so engaging to have the idea of exploring a 3D world in 3D. In some ways it de-abstracts things where you're not having, you play like the original Zelda or any of the Zeldas up to this point, or up until Ocarina of Time, you're looking at that isometric overhead view, and you're allowing your brain to do some of that abstraction for you, and that's fine. But then all of a sudden, the literal world opens up for us, and I speak from experience. I remember being extremely excited for the future of gaming when they started doing, like, the first time I played. This is so dumb, but like Spyro the Dragon. Like playing the first Spyro and how cool that was, just like seeing the little whatever the baubles are that pop out of the enemies as you fry their asses, and how it definitely plays into the feedback loop of gaming that keeps us coming back. And I think it amplified that to an extent. So it's interesting to see where I imagine Kirk and I have a little bit of difficulty embracing nostalgia for a game we didn't play at the time when we have these modern sensibilities. And I think that's going to be a component of our discussion here, if I had to guess. I've seen Kirk being quiet. I think he's being nice.
Yeah, well, I didn't know it was one of Brent's favorite games, because I'm just like, I'm gonna just fucking tear into this piece of shit,
dude. No, do it.
No, that's not entirely fair. And I was gonna outline the reasons why I think I just don't like it that much at all. And one of them was exactly what Benny was saying.
Yeah,
we never played it. It's just one of those things. It's like, how do you think a kid would feel today who is like, let's say, a Pokemon fan?
Yeah.
And then you give them a Game Boy and you give them Pokemon Red or Blue, and you're just like, here, game they never played, and then suddenly you're asking them to play the earlier version of what it used to be and where it came from. They're probably not going to act too friendly towards it.
Yeah.
and this game is a great example, because I've seen Baldur's Gate 3 and I've seen what other games are today.
Yeah.
And then where they came from at the same time, because you mentioned earlier, Brent, that some of these games made a leap into 3D space or would have sequels after the fact, just like Baldur's Gate.
Yeah.
But I mean, I never played Baldur's Gate, so it's a different experience. I mean, in 98, 99, I was alongside Jennifer Love Hewitt, still trying to figure out what she did last summer. I was watching Jason Biggs fuck the pie in 99. And maybe that was the problem. Maybe that movie right there was the big problem too. I was too busy using my personal computer to try to get some hot foreign exchange student on my webcam, man. I don't know. I definitely wasn't using it for Baldur's Gate, I can tell you that.
Well, and I think the problem is that the CD, the fucking CD drive in my fucking computer was so hot that the internet was disconnecting, and so I wasn't able to actually fucking go find porn from all the disc swaps, because this thing came on 6 discs. Future Brent here, just a quick editor's note. It's 5 discs. 5 discs, Brent.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god.
That's
the fucking disc swaps is the biggest nostalgia trip for me, and it's the stupidest nostalgia trip. I'm super down for if you guys have like as we scroll through, because that was just my like opening salvo. Like I have notes, man. Like I wrote a fucking thesis on. We're not a quarter of the way through my fucking prepared shit for this game. But no, like I wanna hear it because I am really curious, because this is so like we were talking about, like for the listeners, this is our second time talking about this. And when we talked about it the first time, you know, every other game that we've talked about up to this point, pretty much it's gone the way I've thought it would go. Right? Like when we did Legend of the Mystical Ninja, which I think was episode 1, I was like, it's a fun game, but it's kind of goofy and broken. And you came back and you're like, it's kind of goofy and broken, Brent. And I was like, yeah, it's kind of goofy and broken. Right? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
kind of goofy and broken, and Brent didn't know how to play a major part of it. So even more broken.
It's kind of goofy. It's kind of goofy and broken, especially if you don't know that the tigers are real.
Yeah. Oh my god.
But yeah, like every other game that we've played up to this point, I've gone, okay, yeah, like, you know, we pick a game, and I go to play the game if it's not one of mine, and I have an opinion, and I go and I talk to you guys about it, and I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, pretty much. Or I give you guys a game and you go play it and you come back and yeah, pretty much. And like we may have disagreements, but this was one that I was like, oh yeah, they'll love Baldur's Gate. And so I kind of want to drill down to, and so I did. I wanted to put for our listeners, because again, like I've been doing the podcaster thing, man. I've been looking at our demographics, and our demographics skew quite a bit younger than I think than I would have expected. And so I know that there's people listening who weren't there. They weren't there for this. This was a really weird space in 1998. This was a period where the idea that you'd go get, you know, a game that, you know, came on 6 discs, 5 discs, and had full motion video, and it had 100 hours of gameplay, and every area that you explore is a single rendered painting. Like, it's not tile-based backgrounds. Like, this game was mind-blowing to me in 1998. And I am fully down for the fact that coming back to it 26 years later, it's not that. I'm super there for that. But I do want to at least give that plug at the beginning to be like, this is why. This is why I was so blown away by it.
No, that's fair. Like, you're establishing, hey, it's just a different time and a different place.
Yeah.
And then especially if you never played it then, and it's been so many years later, you go back and play it, considering everything else you've been exposed to over the past 20 plus years, you're probably going to have a different experience than like what Brent had, obviously.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just like, I
Absolutely.
mean, if you played only the new like Sims game and then you went back and played the very first one, you're not going to have the same experience.
No, hell no.
And that is, I mean, that's a fair point. But yeah. I just wanted to establish, you know, before, that's one of the main reasons. Benny touched on it. I mean, you really hammered it in. The second thing that, no, I'm going to be nice before I really start getting weird with this.
Yeah.
The second major point is, and we can talk about the gameplay and the mechanics in a little bit, but the other establishing one is this
what
game
I've got next.
This game is very heavy on, you know, D&D type mechanics.
Yes.
Except it does a lot of, like, if you've played any of the tabletop D&D, Pathfinder, Starfinder, whatever, you do all the rolling yourself. In this instance, the computer does it for you. However, just like in those games, Baldur's Gate also has like a skill check system where you have to put in points towards charisma or lockpicking or whatever, you know. And to an uninitiated player, I mean, that has a sense of immersion where back in the day, where if you didn't play D&D or what have you, it may seem intimidating, but not in a bad way. More like, oh, it just adds to the immersion. Like, I'm really getting to like customize this character and what they can do, so you really feel for them, and they're really interesting. Except when you're like myself and Benny, who have played many D&D games and many Pathfinder or Starfinder or whatever the hell you want to play. And then you go back and you play this ancient game, and we already understand all the mechanics of that system. Going into it, it's not intimidating, it's not immersive, it's something we are already very intimately familiar with, so it just takes the immersion away even further, because it's like, oh, it's this system we've mastered time and time again. So it turns into almost a point and click adventure to us at a certain point. I just want to establish it's those two things that really just, going back and playing an old game, even one I've never played, it can be absolutely mind-blowingly fun.
Right.
But if there's another extra little thing where it's like, oh, this is a system I already have intimate knowledge about and understand more than, any other average player would, it really, like, it just adds to the tediousness of it all. and you're just frustrated the entire fucking time, and you're no, I'm gonna pass. I'll let someone else take the mic for a while, because I'll tear into it a little bit later. I'll get angry later.
All right. Well, I actually think that's a really great segue, because I wanted to kind of bring us over to gameplay a little bit, and I wanted to talk about, because I think one of the things with this game and a lot of the CRPGs from this era, because a lot of them were based on D&D and AD&D rule sets, this particular one is AD&D 2nd edition, you kind of have two separate things going on, right? Like, you've got the first layer is, we're trying to do an abstraction of the tabletop experience of AD&D. We're trying to build a party, we're going on quests, gaining experience from getting gold and equipment that we're using to level up the characters, blah, 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 blah. But it's a 90s computer game. So we don't have even like 1% of the actual freedom of a tabletop role-playing game. And then the other side of it is Baldur's Gate as an actual video game. Like, not Baldur's Gate as an abstraction of D&D, but Baldur's Gate as Baldur's Gate. A mouse-driven CRPG, and, basically a game that is just click, 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 click. You click on the character, you click on the thing, you click where you want him to go, you click on the enemy that you want him to... Right? I could see, the more we talk about it, I could see how you could wrongly perceive this as a broken game, where it doesn't...
Wrongly?
Where it's like, well, the gameplay is really just clicking the mouse, and it doesn't really achieve the tabletop role-playing game thing. Okay, so gameplay might not be its strong suit.
Let me say, I think that this is a good game that I don't like.
Okay.
I think that the gameplay is part of what is the central factor for my problem with it, because we were talking about other games, and let's take Diablo for example. Similar visually speaking, there are some analogs in terms of gameplay. They're not the same, but they are similar enough that we could draw some parallels.
For sure.
But the difference is, and I guess you could invalidate my statement here a little bit by saying that I do have some nostalgia for Diablo, because I did play it, closer to when it came out. I played it actually when Diablo 2 came out, but I think Diablo stands up fairly well, and then when I'm thinking back on it and trying to figure out why Diablo doesn't feel bad to play, but Baldur's Gate was challenging, is how it feels to play. And I think that Baldur's Gate is a little too clunky, maybe. We're used to extremely responsive interfaces, or clunkiness as a feature to challenge the player, but I think the entire experience for me was a little bit not tedious from the actual experience of watching combat or reading listening to the characters as they're, reading out their stories, their plights, and you're making decisions. I think it's pretty engaging in its presentation, but I did not like playing it. That's really where, and we kind of have to disambiguate that statement of playing. I mean, literally, like hands on keyboard and mouse does not feel as good to play as some other games from the era. And I don't have the benefit of your nostalgia armor to kind of give me the patience to, and maybe the familiarity with it. However long it's been, you still have some muscle memory, and it probably feels familiar to go through the interface and everything. And for me, it's a little bit, I navigate complicated interfaces all day long, and I have very little tolerance for slow responsiveness to things, so maybe there's some creative decisions. Sorry, I'll finish this thought and then I'll hand it over.
No, you're good.
I think there were some creative decisions with the gameplay where it's to make the characters move realistically or somewhat realistically, like in a modern action title, you might move, a joystick, you might, you talked about the lovely Hall effect sticks on your new console. You might expect your character to move instantaneously at full speed, and executing actions in combat in Baldur's Gate is almost intentionally delayed. And there's something about it that is a little bit, aggravating is too serious a word, but it was frustrating as a word Kirk used, which is why I say I think it's a good game that I just didn't like playing.
Well, and do you think that the decision to obfuscate because they hide the fact that it's turn-based behind the graphics. For people that haven't played the game, at the bottom of the screen, there's a little scrolling text bar that's letting you know, what everybody's taking in terms of damage, and if it basically is reading out to you all the different effects and hits and everything that's happening in a Dungeons and Dragons game.
What RNGesus is doing.
There's a lot of times in Baldur's Gate where you click on your character, and as an example, I always play as a ranger or a fighter with a bow and arrow, because fucking ranged attacks are super overpowered in this game.
Oh yeah.
You click on your character, you click on the enemy that you want them to shoot, and nothing happens, right? Because in the game engine that's happening behind the scenes, your turn hasn't happened yet, right?
So is your question, is it should they have not abstracted or obfuscated the underlying roles?
Is that...
I am going to use this as an opportunity to allude to a reference made in the first attempt at recording this to answer that question partially, which is, I think it does limit it a little bit, and I have a specific case. When you're in combat, especially early on, you often spend the majority of a combat whiffing on each other. Both the enemy and the heroes are just swinging wildly, and it's just if you imagine a bunch of elementary school kids with pool noodles just beating the living shit out of each other, that's what it looks like. That's what combat looks like, especially in the beginning of this game. Yeah. And I think by contrast, I would bring up and it's going to be it's not quite as old, but Neverwinter Nights, by contrast, shows those roles, and I think that it would, you'd at least have an idea of what was going on behind the scenes to lead to that. If you saw how close you were, or why you were whiffing all the time mathematically, we're all willing to deal with the tedium of the math when we play it on a tabletop. Part of that is probably because we can see and think, man, we could have made it. For me, there was a specific aggregation where
it'd be much harder if we blind.
aggravation. I'm sorry. Yeah. You know what? I wouldn't have any idea what you guys were doing behind my blindfold, and I wouldn't trust you a goddamn second. But I think that...
Well, it wouldn't be anything to do with the... I mean, it might be with your dice, but that's a different story.
You can roll them. One of the most aggravating things that I had in the whole experience, actually, and this actually is a little bit separate from like the rest of the interface and like just how things feel to play, was having the lockpick skill as a thief and trying to open any number of early game locks and having no idea where I was in terms of like, if I were seeing where my rolls were landing, if I roll an 18, if the game rolls an 18 for me and it doesn't unlock, then I'm going to walk away. I'm probably not going to spend, another 5 minutes trying to get that nat 20 on a skill roll. But when I have no idea, I could just be rolling a shit ton of 9s and 10s and 11s the whole damn time. So I spent a lot of time trying to open stuff and never getting anywhere.
Okay.
Yeah, at least if it were D&D, at some point your GM would be like, just stop.
Yeah.
Just stop.
See, this is what I'm saying. That is a perfectly legitimate criticism of Baldur's Gate. Because it's neither here nor there, right? It's neither abstracted enough from the D&D rules to just be a fun hack and slash RPG. It's not Secret of Mana. It's not just like run around and hack at your sword and gain some levels and just have fun. Nor is
Secret of Mana is so good.
I love that game. Nor does it let you under the hood enough to where you can make decisions based on the actual dice rolls. So no, I will absolutely, if that's your criticism, that is an absolutely valid criticism of the gameplay of Baldur's Gate.
I really have to thank Benny for really drilling down into it. I just gave the broad kind of when you already have that intimacy with the game mechanic from what it's based off of in the future, then and then it ruins that immersion when you go back and play a game like this, and then Benny fleshed out, they don't even tell you why.
Yeah.
That it's so frustrating and it's so annoying. It's like, okay, it was a critical miss. Fucking why and by how much? At least give me a number to base it off of.
So
something, anything. And
so question, and this might be an unfair question, but if we stripped any reference to any tabletop role-playing game system out of this,
I'd still hate it.
Okay. All right.
I actually think that would be more frustrating, because then I would have there would be no common understandable basis for why it was playing that way.
It would just hate you.
Well,
no, you failed.
Because then I'd be like, there's some unknowable magician engine running behind the scenes, and it's just angry at me, and I don't know why it's angry at me, as opposed to Gary Gygax is strangling me from the grave.
All I can think about is that episode of Futurama where Gary Gygax showed up.
Yeah, I like when he rolls a dice. It's rolls dice. Pleasure to meet you.
Yes, that's what I was going to do. Oh my God. Yes, that's my favorite part of that fucking episode. But yeah, no, so, okay, that's fair. Because that's the one thing, okay, and so that's the other thing I didn't say, and I should have, about 98 as a weird year, is it's like, okay, when we were talking about games from the NES era, the late 80s, early 90s, there were games where it would just be like, no, you failed. And there's no reason, no explanation. It's like, no, not today, kid. Go on back. We'll have, my friend Timmy beat the shit out of you now and take your lunch money. No, there were games that just hated you for no reason. But by 98, game mechanics had mostly evolved to the point where it wasn't obfuscated from you why things were fucking happening. And so, no, that makes perfect fucking sense. Thank you, guys. That is a cogent and well-argued point that I will agree with. And I will say, I do think nostalgia plays a massive factor in my painting over that with a broad brush.
Mostly props to Benny there. I just
Yeah.
give the big, just kind of broad. Benny really got in there. It was just
Yeah.
This is why it sucks.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm actually
Yes.
terrified right now that Brent has an absolute arsenal that he's going to bombard us from orbit with.
Oh no. Everything from here is why I like it, but it's nothing to do with that. Like, it's just other things that I like. Well, actually, it's just things about the game. But I mean,
I was preparing myself for that's really interesting. Now here's why you're fucking wrong. Like,
gets in super close to the mic.
yeah,
Fuck you. Yeah. No, that's awesome. So I realized that in my big, like, prepared Clarence Darrow-esque defense opening statement that I'd made, I didn't actually introduce, like, how I came to this game at all. And it's the same thing that I was talking about with Kirk on Alpha Centauri. There was a row of PC big box and jewel case games in our Walmart in the little small town that not the small town I grew up in, but the town 25 miles away that we went to get groceries that had a Walmart.
Yeah.
And that town had a row because every store had video games in the 90s and 2000s. What was that? It was great. I'm not complaining.
Fucking Pizza Hut had video games.
And
dude,
with demo discs. Like,
yeah.
every magazine you
absolutely.
bought had a demo disc in it. Every either for the console that you were buying it related to, or for the PC.
Yep.
The boxes were all the size of cereal boxes.
Yes.
They're so wasteful
Yes.
and they were so beautiful. I still have a
God.
bunch of mine, and I'm sad for the ones that I got rid of.
Dude, I wish I would have held on to. Like, there's so much stuff, obviously. Like, and I know we've all talked about this before. Like, there's so much stuff I wish I would have kept. But my big box PC games, which aren't worth anything, it's just that the art and the manuals and the posters and the maps. Like, okay, so to finish the story, like, most of my games, I would wait until Walmart would, probably with a fucking X-Acto knife, just rip those big boxes to shit, take the fucking jewel cases out and huck them onto the fucking line. But this game, I walked by, I don't know how many times, and it has this, it's the, when we'll talk about it when we get to plot, but it's the seal of the god Baal, who is a major player, we'll say, in the plot of the game. The original big box had like that raised cardboard seal on the front, and I would walk by, and so how old would I have been? I would have been 11 when the game came out. I probably would have was 12 or 13 when I finally bought it. I would walk by it every day, or every time that my mom would go to Walmart, so probably every day. And I would pick that box up, and I'm fucking positive it was the same box. Like, I'm sure they didn't have more than 2 copies. And I would turn it over and I would read the back, and it started out at like $50, and then it was like 45, and then it was like 40, and finally it hit like 28, and I was like, fuck it, I'm getting it. Like, today's the day. And I brought it home and tore it open, and no game that I'd ever had up to that point had more than 2 discs. Because it was really common at that point to have a game with an A and B, and it would be like install and play, and then you'd have to go back to the install disc for certain things. And certainly there were lots of games, like, someone's going to be like, oh, Myst. Yeah, I know Myst had fucking 85 discs. Yeah, okay, I was there too. All right. But there weren't a ton of them. For as much as we talk about the multi-disc games, they existed, but 6 discs was a lot of fucking discs, man.
1, 2, 5. Lisa.
That fucking cardboard fucking thing like popped out of there, and like it unfolded, and it had the big fucking like manual that popped out, and it had a full map that had the whole like
the area is called the Sword Coast. It's from the Forgotten Realms setting of AD&D. That map popped out, and I was just like so excited to play the game. And of course, like every other game that I've ever played, it took me like months to get past the first like 2 areas because I was so dog shit terrible at it, and just got myself killed at every opportunity. But
I'm glad you had that experience when you were that age too.
Yeah, man.
Not understanding the world.
Yeah, the only other game I can think of that had that many discs that I played, or at least close to it, would have been like Final Fantasy VIII. Final Fantasy VIII for PlayStation was 4 discs.
Yeah,
that was probably about the closest that I recall off the top of my head of playing a game to that amount that Baldur's Gate you're saying had. Because otherwise it wouldn't be until like Half-Life 2, which wasn't for another like 6 years later. I think I had like 5 or 6 discs.
Yeah.
To harken back to something you said, Brent, you make a fair point about character selection and the importance of it, which is a bit of asymmetry that might punish the character or the player, and they won't even know about it by picking ranged, magic-based, or melee, because if your main character falls in combat at any time, it's game over.
Right.
So, whereas your other characters, like if you adopt a party, you can go to a nearby temple and you can pay for a revival for them, but you are not afforded you can't take control over one of your other party members and go get your main character revived. I don't know, you've broken some sort of a line of prophecy or something. I'm sure there's you could argue for some sort of in-game thing, but But actually, that was kind of I probably would have picked not a thief and not a sword wielder if I had I think I picked a sword dancer. I would not have done that, I don't think, because that and I got real friendly with the quick save key.
Yeah.
So this is a consideration.
And in 1998, you would not have been able to pick a sword dancer. That would not have been an option that would have been afforded to you. So just real quickly as an aside, if you're playing this game today in 2024, chances are, unless you're a fucking lunatic like me and you spend a good portion of your life trying to play versions of games that are outdated or unavailable on hardware that they weren't intended to be played on, you're probably going to be playing the Baldur's Gate Enhanced Edition that came out a couple years ago. It's available on GOG. It's available on Steam. That is a HD...
it sells itself as a remaster.
Yeah, I think remaster is the proper term for it, but it does include some basically expansion content, and it also includes all the content from the original game as well as the Tales of the Sword Coast expansion that came out a couple years after I think it was the immediate following year, so 99 after the original game. So one thing that's happened over the course of that is that the number of choices in the character selection screen has gotten infinitely bigger, and what that means, unfortunately, because the game hasn't changed really at all, is that the number of wrong choices has gotten increasingly bigger, because the game it definitely rewards a certain style of play. Now I've had friends, I've known people who very successfully play this game in a very different way than I do. But what I'll say is, since I was 12 or 13, I pretty much always play this game the same way. I pretty much always play as a ranged attack.
I love the way you described the final encounter of this game and how you approach that. It's so brutally efficient. It's so cruel, but I love it.
Yeah. So let's do you want to talk more about gameplay? Because we can. I'm happy to do it. Like I say, it is very simple. Like and I don't think you're wrong. I think it's the weak point of the game. Yeah.
do we have other things we want to say about it before we move on?
No, if anything, just kind of fleshing out when you go to area, how there's like a travel time in between.
Yes.
Each, tile in each map. So if you want me, I'll happily tear that down.
Yes, let's do that. But first, let's describe it, because that's a good point. So obviously, this game claims to encompass a huge swath of area, and as I briefly mentioned, all the backgrounds are these massive painted backgrounds. At a time when most 2D games, the backgrounds were tile-based, where they're made up of little tiny pictures that are repeated many, many times to enable you to have lots of different backgrounds out of a very small amount of memory. This in like that. Each area that you travel to is one big picture. Now, that doesn't sound that impressive in 2024, but it took up a lot of space in 1998.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, do you have that one weird uncle who has a model train set in his basement? It's that, except you get to go to a different uncle each time, and he's just as weird and boring.
Okay, now that's just fucking hurtful. The fucking backgrounds are beautiful.
I mean, I think it was probably pretty innovative, or at least an impressive technical feat at the time. Like I'm guessing that they're bit maps, so they're not. You know what? If you're gonna zoom in, you're gonna see some pixel soup. But they are big. I would almost like to look up what the resolution is on those, because they're pretty substantial.
Oh yeah, and so first off, I was reading a thing that the idea to do it that way was come up with by one of the graphic artists for BioWare. And that none of the people at BioWare had ever been involved with a successful game launch. When Baldur's Gate came out, this was the first one they ever did. BioWare, obviously, very successful since then. They've done all the Mass Effect games and Dragon's Age and all that shit. But, this was the first one they did. And, the fact that it was oh, yeah, no, this was the interview I was reading, it's oh, no, that was a terrible idea. that substantially delayed the production of this game. If we would have just done tiles, this would have gone so much smoother. Also, it wouldn't have needed to be on, 5 CDs. This was such a bad idea. Because, as Kirk was saying, and I think the idea behind it is sound in that it sort of replicates the tabletop experience, where if you're going from one space to another space in a game of Dungeons and Dragons, you're not going to be okay, well, hey, let's walk 20 feet up the road. Okay, what do you see? Let's walk 20 feet up the road. What do you see? No, it's okay. Well, we're going to travel from this town to that town. Maybe there's an encounter on the way. But you're going to get to that next area, and that's where all the things are going to happen. And so in Baldur's Gate, there are these areas of interest, and then you will travel from one space to the other by getting out to the edge of the map of that particular area, clicking on it, and then it'll bring up a world map and asking you where you would like to essentially fast travel to. And then time will pass. But the problem is that you have to kind of know how these individual locales on the map connect to each other, which isn't always super clear. It's not super transparent based on their locations. And if they look like they're close to each other, but they're not, and you click on them, then a lot of time will pass, and it'll dramatically increase the chances that you'll be waylaid by enemies and must defend yourself. And have a random encounter with bad guys in the middle. I don't know if any of those are your objections, but those are my objections to it. It's that I don't know how many times I've gone from hey, I want to go from this place to that place, and then all of a sudden I forgot that actually those don't actually connect with each other, and then I've shown up in a random spot in the middle and gotten roasted by a dragon. And
I think I think they pretty easily could have solved that by just putting some indicator lines and maybe even highlighting the ones along your path, and that wouldn't have been, that would have been intuitive to me. Who knows if that would have been feasible for them at the time. Yeah, producing a game is not an easy or
I think
relaxed.
lines were a thing that we'd invented in '98. I think that would have. I think that would have worked.
I don't know. You'd have to show me the research, but well, I was actually going to mention something that you had mentioned during our first attempt at this, which was that this could have been way worse for us, which was that would have potentially dictated disc changes back in the day, whereas playing this as the enhanced edition, it's all sitting in one, overarching umbrella directory on our disks for the install, and all of the assets are available immediately for load. But I think you mentioned that if you clicked on, maybe even like mistakenly on an area that you didn't intend to go to, well, maybe you're in for a bit of a disc shuffle.
Yeah. So no, and it got to the point when I was like 14 that I had memorized what areas on the map were on what disc, so that I wouldn't I could be like, okay,
nerd.
wait.
I love you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I'd be like, wait, hang on. I want to go from Candlekeep to Nashkel. So I got to make sure that I go on these specific, this specific route, so that I only have to change discs once. Because otherwise, if I go this other way, I'm gonna have to change discs. I'm gonna have to change discs. I'm gonna have to change discs twice. And God, yeah, no, I so many times I would accidentally click on an area, and then it would pop out the disc, and you'd have to switch it back, and oh Jesus fucking Christ, yeah. No, it was the fucking the background, which is. It's the FMVs and the background art is the only thing that I can imagine is what's taking up that disk space. And it's beautiful. And now, in retrospect, I think it's some of the stuff that's held up the best of this game. But, Jesus Christ, it was a pain in the ass at the time. Kirk, you've been waiting, man. What do you do? Come on. Because otherwise we're going on to graphics. You wanted to talk about the travel system. It's here.
Oh my God! But
say your piece, or we're moving on.
It has to deal with the whole overarching theme of this entire shit umbrella rainbow.
Oh my God!
It is the biggest fucking click and wait game I've ever had to play in my entire goddamn life. And we can move on from gameplay and go into plot, but I guarantee you, audience, it's just as fucking stupid. Oh my God! I'm just I am so frustrated. Okay, so you know how we recorded it, lost the footage. I'm gonna use this as an opportunity to go back and play another hour or two to see if maybe I'm missing something. No, the only thing I'm missing now was the hours of my life that I dedicated to trying to play this fucking game again. So, if we want to move on the plot, it makes the most sense, because it's oh, you're the son of this noble guy, whatever, and you gotta go on this quest, and you're supposed to join him or whatever, but the whole process takes too fucking long. But that's just kind of a euphemism for the entire game. I got to the point where, from what I understand, because I eventually read a walkthrough where I needed, the next thing I needed to do was, just clear out this band camp. Or bandit camp. God, I wish it was a band camp. That'd be cool. It was a bandit camp. And the entire time, I'm just just something happen! Something happen in this game, please! Oh, great, I gotta clear out this bandit camp? Great, how long is it gonna take me to fucking get there before something happens? Oh my God! And then I get to another dumbass fucking tile, and then I gotta go across that goddamn thing, the creepy uncle in his basement with the fucking model train set. I got to the point where I was so frustrated, it was just oh, sorry. I got so frustrated. I was just like, all right, I'm going to make my thief go invisible. Just walk out across the map.
Kirk
just to
is
make sure
so
the coast
mad
is
at
clear,
Baldur's
and
Gate
then
that he's
send
scaring his wife.
everybody else. Send everybody else across the map just so I get across this piece of shit, just so something happens. Something happens. I'm so bored with this game. It sucks. It sucks. I would rather play solitaire for 5 hours straight than play this fucking game, because at least then I'm engaged and something is happening. This game is so boring.
How long have you been holding that in for, man? That can't be healthy. Do you feel better?
According to the recording, at least an hour and 49 minutes.
Do you?
Oh my god.
Oh, I gotta figure out why the ore in the mine has gone rancid. Great! How long is it gonna take to get there? Can we go there now, please? Please!
Oh my god. Oh.
Why is it happening? Cool! All these kobolds are here? Great! Get the fuck out of my way! Die already so I can figure out what the fuck is going on so I can save the day and then move on to the next dumb fucking plot point.
And then Brent slowly backs away from the microphone. So the plot of the game.
So the plot of the game.
So
Oh.
the
Alright, I'm done. I'm done now. I'm fine. I'll calm down. My family was like behind me and concerned. They were just like, "Oh, he's talking about Baldur's Gate, isn't he?"
the plot of the game. It's okay. Oh my god. Kirk is literally having to comfort his family. They're concerned.
Like-
They're coming up to him with blankets and scotch.
No, you can talk to my wife, and there are so many times when I have to like stop and walk into the living room and go do something else, and she'd be watching like the Great British Bake Off or something, and I'd just be grumbling and mumbling to myself, and she's like, "Honey, is it okay?" I'm like, "This game is so fucking boring." Like, I'm watching YouTube and watching documentaries and shit on my Plex server at the same time I'm playing this game, just so I have something else to do while playing this game. I could have brought up like fucking a translator. I could have brought up, Rosetta Stone and started learning another language, because this game is just that level of just...
May I suggest Dwarvish?
Dwarvish.
Maybe it'll be helpful in game.
Oh, but no, I'm dead serious. I was just, I was watching just whatever I could, just to pass the time.
Okay. Well,
The plot?
I don't... The plot. So the
What
plot.
plot?
Plot. So, in the plot of the game, you play as Gorian's ward, and you can make him or her or whatever whoever you want. It's like customizable character. You can do whatever you want with them. So they're cool. And you live with your adoptive father, Gorian, in Candlekeep, which is like a monastery / library kind of place. They got books and they got monks. And it's super chill. And then one day, Gorian
Except when they try to kill you.
Except for the guys that try to kill you. And then you swing your arms at them like this, which you can't see. But I'm swinging my arms. And not much is happening because you're level 1. And they're level 1. And they got a dagger. And you don't got a dagger. But you kill them most of the time. And then one day, Gorian
It's the pool
tells
noodle
you
analogy again.
Yeah, pool noodle analogy. One day, Gorian tells you you gotta get the fuck out of there. You gotta not be in Candlekeep no more. And then you and Gorian get ambushed by a real big dude, and he's got armor on, and he's got a bunch of other big dudes with him, and they kill Gorian, and you run off into the woods.
It's a pretty cool magic battle.
But turns out you're kind of a wuss, and then you run into Imowen, and she's a thief. She's a human thief lady. She wears pink, and she's got a bow and arrow, and she steals shit. And she's your childhood best friend. And she's the first character you can recruit into your party if you want to do that. And then you go to the Friendly Armin, and there's people there. They're named Khalid and Jahira, and they're married, and they make the smoochies with each other. I assume. We don't see that because it's not Baldur's Gate 3, and this game isn't nearly as horny as y'all like nowadays. Again, little tiny pixelated titties. But along the way, you almost get your shit blown up by a mage assassin. And then you figure out you got to go to Nashkel, which is like in the south. And because there's mines and the iron's coming on Nashkel, it's real shitty. And that's why...
Just drop down the fucking SpongeBob SquarePants splash screen and the guy that says 3 hours later. Like, just that. That is this game. And so because the iron's real shitty, and so this game has Breath of the Wild syndrome. Where all the weapons, they break. Brent's talking like Daddy just hit Mommy at the table.
So anyway, all right. So anyway, you do the Nashkel thing. Yeah, okay. All right. So there's lots of kobold rat people, and there's spiders. There's other shit, and you kill all of them. And after you kill all of them, you find out that there's a guy at the bottom of the mine, and he's working with a group of mercenaries and bandits who are hired by a group called the Iron Throne, which is a merchant organization. Oh, by the way, spoilers. I don't know if I mentioned that, but literally I'm describing the plot to you, so some of this is on you people. I can't be expected to hold your hand through all this shit, okay? Yeah, so Iron Throne, they're a merchant organization, at least supposedly, based out of the city of Baldur's Gate. Hey, that's the name of our game. And you go there after some other things. You fight some bandits, several.
Yeah, no. I want you to explain each one of these boring ass fucking things.
Well, I'm not gonna do it step by step. That'll take a long time. It's a fucking 30-hour game. Like
29 hours and 48 minutes of that is just clicking and waiting for people to get to the other side of the whatever map you're on.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, it's a fucking point-and-click game. Like, yeah. Like, that's like saying, well, how long of Fear was shooting guys? Like, probably fucking most of it.
But at least you were doing something. I can't play Fear and then, like, be able to watch a YouTube video at the same time because there's a level of engagement there that exists.
Maybe you just haven't trained your eyes to focus separately. Iguanas could.
Hey, if
iguanas could play Fear and watch YouTube.
If you guys break up, do I get 2 Christmases?
I'm happy I established why I don't like this game beforehand, and I was being very cordial. Now it's my time to be the asshole and just tear this down.
Also,
I'm sure if I played it back in 1998 and then I played it again, I'd have different things to say, but it didn't happen. So you get to deal with this.
This is also, that's the most rational comeback ever. It's like, well, you're not an iguana, Kirk.
Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then I lick my own eyeball.
All right. Let me glide this into a
lizard people confirmed.
Yeah.
Talk about graphics and what other things you want to use to try to salvage this piece of shit.
No, hang on. I was going to talk about the fucking plot. I'm talking about the fucking plot. You kill some bandits, you fight through big hordes of bandits, and then you can also engage in a bunch of side quests. I like this. The spread on how long to beat between just main story and the completionist is 30 versus 90 hours. So there's 60 hours of side quests in this fucking game. I don't know why I say fucking game. This is a great game. And you eventually wind up infiltrating...
His subconscious is betraying him finally. He knows it sucks. See, he's short-circuiting. I knew it.
Yeah.
It's coming out.
Eventually you wind up infiltrating the Iron Throne. only to find out that the head of the Iron Throne is an evil dude named Sarevok, who you've heard the name multiple times by that point. You've actually run into him in Candlekeep, which you've infiltrated at one point. And you find out that he is the son of Baal, the god of violence and ritualistic killing, which is a thing that has its own god in the Forgotten Realms setting. So that's cool. Also known as the Lord of Murder. And that Sarevok is trying to start a war between Baldur's Gate and Amn in the hopes that the ensuing bloodbath will let him be crowned as the new Lord of Murder. And oh, by the way, you are his half-brother. So basically, tell me why in any way, shape, or form this is less of a classic than Star Wars.
And it's pretty good.
It's a pretty
Star
good Wars. You didn't have to like click and wait for the other people to get wherever you're going. Like it, if there was any boring shit, it just went to the next scene. Like I'm sure there's some less interesting things. Like Chewbacca is just, they didn't show the entire weird chess game he was playing on the ship. They just started that scene just him and C3PO just like playing the chess game. You didn't have to watch the whole game.
Fair.
There's going to be
what led up to the confrontation.
There's going to be a game with a travel mechanic in like 10 years. Kirk's going to have forgotten all about this. And then he's just going to have a fucking like war flashback when he clicks on the edge of a map.
Yeah, like we weren't in the Dagobah system, and like we're watching like Luke Skywalker take a shit in the swamp. Like we didn't have to experience all that. It just went from like him training as a Jedi, not like him just like cooking frogs or whatever. Like it was compartmentalized, so it was interesting to the viewer.
The plot is Kirk said a bunch of stuff.
Baldur's Gate. Watch out, Marvel.
So the plot is it feels very much like any other game setting from like a pre-made tabletop RPG game. Like so, you buy a book from Wizards of the Coast, and then you have a whole game's worth of content in front of you. But ultimately, it's not the it may not be this. The fate of the world hanging in the balance sort of thing. It may be this little corner of Galarian is what's at stake. It's a regional plot. And so sometimes I feel like we're more these days expecting every plot to be the fate of the world, hangs in the balance. And so the scale feels smaller.
Yeah, well, and I mean, like, to be fair, like, if your half brother succeeds, he is gonna set himself as the god of ritualistic murder on Earth. So, like that.
Yeah, but like, how many times has that happened?
I mean, like, to be fair. God damn it, motherfucker! Now I'm saying to be fair every sentence.
To be fair.
To be fair.
To be fair.
Let's talk about the fucking characters and sound, and then let's get the fuck out of here, because I'd like to see my wife tonight.
Aw, I wanted to badger you some more.
Well, you can. We have 2 more things to talk about. And some of them are badgers, or at least hamsters. All right. So
this really went off the rails. Sorry. Start over. I'll shut up.
No, you are under no obligation to shut up. In fact, please don't. It's a podcast. But yeah, so speaking of plot things, let's talk briefly about the characters in this game, because obviously, like, it's a big part of what gives this game its personality is the recruitable characters. So
I don't think Kirk and I got into this deep enough to like form those kinds of emotional attachments to characters. But I think you talked about like, kind of like you grow like attached to like specific characters, and then you're like, these like, this is my party. And like, I think that even played into one of the things that struck us when we talked about this before, which we'll get to with the final battle if we talk about that. But
Yeah,
the characters are unique and frankly entertaining,
including the characters introduced in the Tales of the Sword Coast expansion and the expanded or the enhanced edition. We're up now to 25 recruitable characters, which is considerably more than we had at launch. There's a lot of interesting things to talk about just mechanically with how the characters work. First off, they're not all compatible with each other. There's each one of the recruitable characters has their own side quest story that will launch off on. A lot of them are in direct opposition to each other. So, for example, there's a wizard character whose main goal is to go find a character and kill her. And then there's another character whose main goal is to find that character and rescue her. Okay? You can...
And they start like 20 feet from each other in the same town, too. That's the best part.
And you can actually recruit both of them at the same time, go to the same place, and then once they find her, they immediately try to kill each other. You won't necessarily know ahead of time how that's going to work. So there are story reasons why these characters are not compatible with each other. So you can't just pick... I think I mentioned it before, but there's a max of 6 characters in your party. You can't just pick any random 1 to 6. There's some characters that work together. There's some characters that don't. The other reason, and this will be something that if you're familiar with Dungeons & Dragons or tabletop role-playing game generally, alignment plays a role in this as well. Also, some characters are a package deal. So I mentioned that one of the characters was like looking for his love who was captured. That's Minsk, and he's looking for Dynahair. Dynahair and Minsk, if you get them both in your party at the same time, they're a package deal. If you try to reform your party and kick one of them out, the other one will leave. Likewise, Khalid and Jahira, who we mentioned earlier. So if you wind up with both of them in your party, and they're both alive, they both either stay or they both go. Or you can kill one of them by just sending them off on a suicide mission and then not reviving them. And that works too if you're particularly bloodthirsty.
Or they can get mad at 2 of the other characters and then they kill all 4 of them, kill each other in the middle of a field, and then you're left alone wondering what the fuck just happened. Ask me how I know.
Yeah, that can also happen. Oh, God. That sounds amazing. Do tell.
I was very confused. I went from 6 to 2. And then me and, what's the thief girl's name? I just blinked on it.
Imoen.
Hey, it's me, Imoen.
Me and Imoen are just standing in the middle of a field with corpses of our
just
previous
corpses.
companions all over the place.
That's awesome. So yeah, so the constitution of your party is sort of locked in. There's certain parties that will work. I mentioned this earlier, but particularly in the first 2/3 of the game, maybe your ranged attack characters are really overpowered because your spellcasting characters have a really, really limited number of spells that are available to them and a really limited number of attempts to cast them. And your tank characters just don't have enough hit points to really soak up much damage. And you probably don't have enough money to equip them with very good equipment, very good armor. So the best strategy early in the game, quote-unquote best strategy earlier in the game, is to go with ranged attack. Well, if you have a ranged attack character, then you're going to naturally build a party that suits that. So I always pretty much wind up with the same party. Okay? And the other thing, before I dive into this, the other thing that happens with this is the game is a little broken. I feel like I keep saying that. Kirk, shut up in advance. But the game's a little broken in that if you...
The dam is starting to crack.
No, sir. No, sir.
Oh, God.
But no, as you accrue experience, it's divided up evenly amongst your party. So it's in your interest early in the game to have a smaller party
because the game will, as you add characters later on, it will give those characters a certain percentage of your experience points. And I forget exactly what it is. But so, by way of example, if I have just myself and Imoen through the first, 4 or 5 chapters of the game, and I get the two of us up to like level 6 or 7, and then I go recruit a character who would normally be at level 1, when I recruit them, they'll probably be at like level 4. Whereas if I would have recruited them at the beginning of the game, it would have divided up our experience points equally between us, and we would all be at a lower level. So it's in your best interest in the game to keep your party as small as possible for as long as possible, do as many side quests as possible early on to build up your experience. And then once you go towards the end of the game and you get to the really difficult fighting, that's when you want to go grab as many characters as you can and fill up to a party of 6.
That's kind of broken.
And it is broken. I'll admit that. And Benny's giggling because he knows where I'm getting at with this. So my default party is pretty much always myself. Like I say, I'm almost always a ranger or a fighter with a bow and arrow. Imoen, who is your childhood best friend. She's the first recruitable character you run across. She is a thief. You'll need a thief. Now, you can be that thief, but there will be multiple situations throughout the game that are going to be much, much easier if you have somebody with lockpicking skills and trap detection skills. So you need a thief anyway, and she's right there. Perfect. And then I usually go get Branwen. Now, Branwen is a character that you run into in Nashkel, and you can basically pay a guy to get she's been turned to stone. You can buy a stone to flesh scroll.
At the festival of just that place sucks. Anyway, not in the way I hate the game, but like you go into every tent and something bad is happening. Like
That's
legitimately
true.
bad. Like you'll get fucking pickpocketed, or you'll walk in on someone trying to murder another person. Like
how is that different than
Kirk
any other
being
circus?
Like I hate the game. Like no, it really is like a horrible circus. So
although one of my favorite moments in the game is there. So there's a mage standing like right when you first enter the area, right? And he's like, "Hey, come see the disappearing ogre." And you go over and you talk to him and he conjures an ogre. And then he casts a little spell, and the exploding animal animation happens. You're like, wait, like, and the crowd all cheers, and you hear a little woo sound, and you're like, wait, hang on, but that fucking ogre just exploded. Like you, the player character, knows that ogre just blew up. That didn't just disappear. And if you just go on, that's all that ever happens. But if you talk to him again, he conjures him again, blows up again. And I think it's the 4th time he conjures him. The ogre just straight up murders that wizard and then just goes on a killing spree throughout the fucking... It's amazing. It's so good. There's so many of those kind of things where it rewards that level of just, I guess, boredom, where you just keep clicking on it to see what happens next. But yeah, I'll usually recruit Branwen, and she's a priest, or priestess, I guess I should say, and she's actually like pretty tough. Like she's a cleric, I guess I should say, and she's pretty damage spongy, and she's also a pretty good healer.
I think the word you're looking for is tanky.
Yes, thank you. She's a pretty good tank, and she's a pretty good healer. And so you've got this 3-person party that can actually handle just about anything that gets thrown at it. And so what I'll do is I'll just run through, 90% of the game with that, and then right at the end, right when I'm getting ready to face Saravak and his minions,
which is an incredibly hard fight. Like, order of magnitude more difficult than anything else in the game. I'll just go recruit the 3, like, biggest, tankiest dudes in the game and just send them in a wave to get just demolished while Branwyn, Imoen, and I just stand back and pick the bad guys off with bows and arrows and slings. It's great. And I just watch these 3 random guys just get disintegrated. It's amazing. It's absolutely heartless, and it's been my same strategy for, 20 years now. So,
waiting for Brent to be like, yeah, so my alignment is lawful good. Yeah.
I mean,
but the puppeteer is more chaotic evil.
Right. But
how do you feel about suicide missions?
Yeah. But I wanted to really quickly mention, so one of the things that struck me when I first played this game and since is this game is got a lot of voice acting in it, and that was kind of new for me. I don't think it wasn't crazy new for 1998, but it was certainly new for me. Some of the people that are in this I think are really cool. So first off, we mentioned Minsk briefly. Minsk is just an amazing character.
Yeah, best character.
Absolutely. Fucking amazing. So he's a giant barbarian with a big fucking two-handed sword who is just fucking insane. He carries around a hamster that he insists is a miniature giant space hamster, and he's just a fucking lunatic.
I need aid soon, lest my hamster become an orphan.
And what you may not know about Minsk is that he's voiced by fucking Winnie the Pooh. Jim Cummings, the voice of Winnie the Pooh, Darkwing Duck, Dr. Robotnik from the Sonic Show, Ed from the Lion King, was both the voice of Minsk and Gorion. Jim Cummings has been in everything. He's been in, he has 601 voice acting credits on IMDb. He's basically the voice of our childhood. If there's an animated TV show from our childhood, Jim Cummings is in it. And Jim Cummings is the guy who is like, "Go for the eyes, boo!
Go for the eyes, boo! Go for the eyes, Rusk!"
And it's just fucking amazing.
He's like OG Nolan North. If you had to,
Yeah.
if you had to put a modern day guy,
Yeah.
he fucking in everything, anywhere and everything.
And then Minsk's, lady love, Dinah Hare, is Jennifer Hale, who was Samus Aran in Metroid Prime. She was Naomi Hunter in the Metal Gear Solid series. She's the female version of Commander Shepard in the Mass Effect games, which obviously staying with BioWare. So again, incredibly successful voice actress. And then I love this was my favorite was Kevin Michael Richardson is Saravok, is Goro from Mortal Kombat, which as soon as you hear that, you're like, oh yeah. But yeah, for me it was really cool because it was one of the first times I remember playing a video game and going, oh, acting is a thing that can happen in video games. That linkage hadn't really ever occurred to me before. So I just wanted to mention that really quickly because again, especially Jim Cummings is somebody that I think deserves recognition. They did a documentary not terribly long ago. I'll put a link in the doobly-doo where they talk about voice actors and some of the work that they do and how they go unrecognized. And I think all 3 of those actors that I mentioned got mentioned in there. So just kind of a cool thing.
No, it's great. But I really was happy that you brought up the voice acting because even though it is 90s video game cheesy, you got to remember these games are so uncomplicated and so very simple that they're the sprites or and models or whatever had no facial expressions.
Yeah.
So while we would consider it today to be cheesy, they had to be cheesy to really get across what that character was trying to do. And I mean, it's no surprise that cast who did some of the voice acting in this game would go on to do such larger things, because they knew what they needed to do to get that character across by being more animated with their voice, because the action of physicality just wasn't there.
Yeah, they really didn't have much to work with in terms of characterization with what was going on the screen, and so the fact that they went as scenery chewing as they did with the voice acting, I think was the right choice, and it certainly made it very memorable for me. Okay, so the only other thing I wanted to talk about before we get to kind of final thoughts was the sound, and I choose that word over music. The blend of the sound design and the blend of the music, which is really low key and ambient and really unobtrusive is the way I would describe it. It's not, you're not going to be sitting listening to the music from Baldur's Gate on CD. Like, that's not what this music's about. But the blend of that with the sound effects, it actually reminds me a lot of the game we talked about last time, which is Fear, where the music low in the mix, the sound effects really giving that sense of place. Because a lot of this game takes place, obviously, it's Dungeons and Dragons. We're walking around in caves and dungeons, and we're walking around in forests and on mountaintops and in deserts, and the wind and the birds and the crinkling of leaves and the dripping of water. It's really, really distinctive, and it's done with passion. The guy who was the lead composer for this, guy named Michael Honig, this is his only... this game and its sequels are his only video game credit. Everything else he's ever done are TV and movies in the United States and Europe. He did Max Headroom. He did 9.5 Weeks. He's
Max Headroom, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And to be clear, not everything he's done is great. Like, he did Dracula 3000. I'm not claiming that he was, worked on bangers, but this is not somebody who comes from the world of video game music. And what I do think he brought to this, particularly in this era, is he brought a certain sense of kind of that sense of place and that kind of sense of sound design. And yeah, when I think of this game, and when I have that kind of sense memory of Baldur's Gate, a lot of it has to do with just the sound. I was talking to Aaron about this not terribly long ago. Like, we were in a park, and I was sitting there, and I was like, it sounds like Baldur's Gate here, which is probably the nerdiest thing I've ever said. But yeah, the level of attention to detail to the sound design, I think, is really praiseworthy in this game, for whatever that's worth.
Well, I think that we take it for granted with the modern fidelity of sound, but at the time it wasn't that long after, MIDI-based sounds and things that were barely intelligible. I mean, you're talking about voice acting, and we're not that far chronologically away from a time when no voice in any game was intelligible as human speech, even if they were trying. So, so to start capturing that level of fidelity and just that level of to divide fidelity and realism a little bit, like to make it the world feel a little bit more lived in, or a little bit more, the things you don't notice are the things that are nevertheless filling space. So like the sound, if you're not noticing it, then it's probably doing its job, and I think it does that very well.
All right. Did you guys have anything else? Was there anything that we wanted to cover off on before we wrap this one up?
Nah, all in all, just wish the game, like, if you didn't have to bring your whole party to a certain area, I think it's safe to say, like, if you're all in the same inn, only, like, one person really has to go to the door. The whole party doesn't have to be near the door. I think, like...
But you must gather your party before venturing forth.
Yeah.
You must gather your party before venturing forth.
You know, that's a thing, I think, and I won't stay on this long, but clearly people had more fucking time to play games back then, because like right now no one would fucking tolerate like, oh, I forgot one character somewhere at the other end of the fucking map.
Why are you guys leaving
I'm not gonna
characters places? Why aren't you bringing
because
your
it's
party?
easy to forget them. It happened to me a number of times.
Just select them all. Just bring them.
Well, I think
Just
they
bring
would get
'em.
caught behind a... They would get caught behind a tavern table or whatever, or on a bed on the upstairs, and they wouldn't be able to make it. Like, their pathing, it was so shit, they couldn't make it to the door. And then they...
And with that...
So then you get that warning, like, oh, you got to gather your party while you look at your other person there, and they're walking in.
Thank you guys for
God
listening.
damn it. Will something please
We appreciate
happen
you all
in this
joining
game?
us.
Why am I spending so much
If you
time
like what
on
you're
the
hearing,
mechanic?
join us here on Discord. We got a Spotify. We got a Apple Music. We got a YouTube. We got other things. We got various sorts of social media nonsense and other things that cause me to speak in this very strange fashion, including a Facebook. We got one of those. And we will be joining you guys again soon. And with that, you guys have a great night. Goodbye. Tiny pixelated boobies.